Did you get your business's logo from a website like Upwork or Fiverr, and now you're feeling frustrated that it's difficult to use, unhappy with the way it turned out, and generally just underwhelmed with the entire experience? If so, then this episode is for you. We're diving into why Upwork and Fiverr logos don't last and when you should use those services instead. Welcome to the Six Figure Brand Podcast, where each week we're pulling back the curtain on what it really takes to build a six-figure business as an online service provider. I'm your host, Morgan. I'm a branding expert, online agency owner, mom of two, and military spouse, and I'm obsessed with helping entrepreneurs like you understand the ins and outs of branding so that you can use it to grow your business without sacrificing your sanity. Whether you're just starting out or focused on scaling, we're diving into everything you need to build a profitable and sustainable online business. Let's get to it. Super early in my design career, I'm talking like a couple weeks into my first big girl design job, I had a supervisor share with me this triangle graphic. She just drew it on a piece of paper. It was a triangle. On the top, it said good. On the bottom left, it said fast. And on the bottom right, it said cheap. And she told me, in the design world, you get to pick two. So you can either have a design that is good and fast, but it won't be cheap. A design that's good and cheap, but it will not be fast, and a design that's fast and cheap, but it will not be good. Websites like Upwork and Fiverr tend to fall into the fast and cheap, but not good category, and if you've learned that the hard way, I'm sorry. But today we're going to dive into why Upwork and Fiverr logos don't really last and when you should use these services instead. So using a design service like Upwork or Fiverr, and those aren't the only two, those are just the two biggest names. But using one of those services might seem like a really good idea if you're on a budget and you're looking to get something done super quickly. But unfortunately, 9 out of 10 times, you're going to run into a plethora of issues, both getting your logo done, using your logo, trying to grow your business with that logo, etc. And I also want to be really clear here. I talked about this in episode 1 of the podcast. I started my freelancing career on Upwork. So I know firsthand that as a freelancer and a designer, these platforms can be great for building your business, and I'm not here to knock them on the whole. There's a ton of talented freelancers on Upwork and Fiverr that are running really successful businesses and are good at what they do. I also know that when it comes to branding and logo design in particular, these websites are usually not the best choice for plenty of different reasons. Today, we're going to dive into why that is and also when it actually is a good idea to use these types of services in your business. So the biggest and most glaring issue with using designers on a website like Fiverr or Upwork to create a logo for you is that they're lacking strategy and context. So most designers here are going to jump straight to visuals without diving into your brand strategy at all. They are pretty much relying on you to tell them what to do. So they'll ask you what you want and then they just make the thing. And they're relying on you to be the expert, really. You typically will get something that looks nice, but then down the road, you're going to wonder, why is this still not attracting the type of clients I'm looking for? And the answer is because you have only taken into account what you like and how you want your logo to look and not your ideal client, your brand values, your goals, etc. The second issue that you're going to run into is that your logo is a really high chance of looking pretty generic and not really standing out from the crowd. So I don't want to say all, but frequently designers on these websites are trying to crank out as many projects as they can, and that's how they're able to make working on these places profitable. So they'll use templates or they will just slightly modify a pre-made logo, which means that your logo is not going to be super unique. This is kind of the cost of getting it done fast and cheap, right? You could have fast and cheap, but it's maybe not going to be so great. So not only is this a bummer because your business doesn't have a unique logo, it doesn't stand out, it's not memorable, but you also can run into some legal issues here. So you run the risk of not being able to copyright your logo because you have no idea if they're copying someone else's logo using design assets that maybe haven't been properly licensed, etc. So on the one hand, it really sucks to know that your logo looks like somebody else's, but on the other hand, you might end up with some really serious, expensive issues down the road because your designer copied another logo that you didn't know that that's what they were doing, or they just didn't make your logo unique enough that it's able to be easily copyrighted. And then finally, and this is really my biggest beef with getting a logo from somewhere like Fiverr or Upwork, is that they're giving you just a logo, and that really, really limits your growth. So and I have this in quotes in my notes, just a logo doesn't come with a full brand identity. So they don't necessarily give you a font palette and a color palette and guidelines of how to use your logo and all the different variations of your logo that you're going to need. So like an icon version and a horizontal version. A brand designer will really go the extra mile to give you all of these tools so that you can use your brand in any place and it's always going to look great. So if you spend $50 or $100 on a logo on Fiverr, they will likely give you one single logo file, which is going to make it extremely, extremely difficult to actually use in practice, because very quickly you will run into the issue of, hey, I'm trying to print my logo on a pen, but my logo is a circle shape. So whenever I put it on the side of a pen, it's so small that you can't even read it. So those types of things. There is also no guarantee that you're going to get the proper file types, right? So whenever I deliver logos to a client, we give them a color version, a reverse version, an all black and an all white version. And then for each of those, they're getting usually about 4 different file types. So that's 4 versions of their logo, 4 file types each at minimum. When you get your logo from one of these design websites, you're probably honestly just getting one single PNG of your logo. So that's not ideal because a PNG is a web file and not a print file. So what happens if you need to print your logo? What happens if you need your logo to be in a different orientation? What happens if you want to make edits to your logo? You don't have all the things you need in order to truly be able to utilize the logo that they've designed for you. So what this means is that even though you saved a lot of money hiring somebody who created something within like your lower budget, pretty quickly, you're probably going to end up needing to hire another designer to either do a complete rebrand or at least kind of refresh and expand upon what you have. So really in the long run, it's costing you more money and more time than if you had just invested in a more legit and professional design service in the first place. Now, all of that to say that I am a big fan of Upwork in particular. I'm not as familiar with Fiverr. And I think that those types of job boards are super, super useful in the right instances. So I would suggest using somewhere like Upwork or Fiverr for super specific tasks, things like quick and pretty low risk design needs. So for example, if you have an established brand identity already and you need somebody to just take that and create social media graphics or a slide deck for a presentation or any type of like one-off assets where you can give them your brand style guide and say, here, make me XYZ social graphics that follow this brand identity. Another thing that I think Upwork and Fiverr are great for is more production type tasks. So things like data entry, or if you're moving your email list over from one platform to another, those type of things that don't really require any kind of like creative strategy. It's more just you need a human to get the work done. Third, I would say anything that you need on a super, super quick turnaround. So if you come to me and you say, Morgan, I have an event happening in 3 days and I need a flyer created for it. I'm booked. I'm probably not going to be able to turn your project around that quickly, but I can almost guarantee you can find somebody on Fiverr or Upwork that will. And in that situation, you may have to kind of settle for the design being good enough, like not mind blowing, but they'll get it done in time and you'll have something at least. And then finally, I would say you could get away with using one of these services for logo design if you can tell them exactly what you want. So you can say, I want a silhouette of a dog head and I want this font and here's what I want it to say. If you can get that specific and you just don't have the skills to use a design tool to create it yourself, then you're probably okay in the short term. So if you're not going to be using it forever, if it's just a good enough for now type situation. I would also say if you're super, super new to business, then I probably wouldn't suggest investing several $1,000s into brand strategy and design until you kind of get your feet under you and really start to get a better idea of your ideal client and what services you're offering and stuff. So typically for newer business owners, I would suggest that you DIY your logo, but if that's not something you're comfortable doing, then somewhere like Fiverr or Upwork could be an okay answer for you. I think the Is your brand and website feeling stale, outdated, and disjointed? If you're feeling a little called out, we should chat. Spect & Co is here to help you show up with more confidence and book more clients through personalized and strategic branding and website design. Anyone could design you a pretty logo, but our strategy-backed system has helped our clients triple their audience size, double their revenue year over year, and increase their rates by over 30%. If that sounds too good to be true, I promise it's not. Use the link in the show notes to book a free discovery call so we can chat about what strategic branding and web design could mean for your business. Key to making these services work for you is just really know what you're getting into and make your expectations super clear. So do you need somebody who's a true expert and is going to have their own proven process and framework and really hold your hand through getting done whatever thing you're trying to get done? If that's the case, then you're probably not going to find that on Upwork or Fiverr. But if you just need somebody to crank out the work, get it done, and follow your exact directions, then that's where something like Fiverr or Upwork could probably be pretty useful for you. So to kind of close this one out, I would say that on the whole, and there's always exceptions, Fiverr and Upwork logos typically lack strategy and they don't give you a comprehensive visual identity. And that's why I frequently see people who come to me for a rebrand and say, I got this logo on Fiverr and it's just not quite what I want, or I'm having a hard time using it, or I don't really know how to design things that go with it. And that's why. You also run a big risk of having a super generic or even copied design that can lead to all sorts of legal and licensing issues down the line. And it's easy to say, oh, well, that's a problem for later. But then later, when it does become a problem, you're going to be kicking yourself and wishing that you had just avoided it in the first place. Now, the flip side of that coin is that, like I said, there are times when these platforms make sense, but I don't think that they make sense for long-term branding for an established business owner. If you were able to, I would strongly encourage you to invest in custom and strategic professional branding that is really gonna, first and foremost, set your business up for success, but also help you to avoid some of those hiccups and stumbling blocks that skimping on these things in the beginning can create down the road. Once your business is successful and you're busy, you aren't going to want to come back and fix all these mistakes of things that you kind of cut corners or tried to take like the cheap and fast route. So if that's something you're interested in, I would invite you to learn more about our services. I will link them in the show notes. And this week, I want to shout out my friend Jenny. She's a podcast strategist. Her business is podcasting for moms. She's been such a great resource as I have kind of gotten this show out of my brain and out into the world. And I know Start a Podcast is on a lot of people's to-do list for 2025. So I would highly recommend reaching out to Jenny. She can point you in the right direction, help you figure out who your audience is, what your strategy is going to be, and make this whole podcasting thing seem a whole lot less scary. So I will put her info in the show notes. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for tuning in to the Six Figure Brand Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to rate the show and leave a review on whatever app you're listening on. And as a thank you, I'll send you coffee on me. Yes, I'm serious. As a smaller show for now, you taking the time to do this makes a huge impact on how we can reach more people and how I can continue to create this content for free. When you take a screenshot of your review, follow and tag me on Instagram at @SpectandCo. I'll send you a $5 Starbucks gift card. As always, don't forget to check out the show notes for any links or resources I mentioned during the episode. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you next week.